Both the United States and India are robust democracies, and while we have different cultures and political systems, I think there's an interest in having the people know what its government is doing. Not every secret detail of every activity, but to understand the principles that it's behind, to understand the citizens' rights to confront their government if they feel they've been treated unjustly or if they feel their civil rights have been violated.
So our first question is, you mentioned yesterday that people are becoming scared about technology and they have less confidence in government. So how can government, citizens, technocrats, everyone can make citizens, the single entity which every infrastructure depends on, more confident in artificial intelligence and other aspects of technology?
Well, you've got a lot wrapped up in that question. First, I think citizens are both excited and concerned about technology. Excited about the opportunity it brings for development, economic opportunity, and personal realization. At the same time, I think we're increasingly aware of the possible negative manipulations of data and technology that can be adverse, whether by criminals or by competitive nation states. So that conjoined with the issue that we have questions about confidence in government, and obviously nationalist tendencies or corrupt actions by different governments from time to time heighten those concerns. So your question about how can we alleviate those fears or overcome those obstacles is incredibly important. Technology underpins everything we're doing in our societies today, and I think part of the message here at CyFy that we're looking to discuss is, in this world of increasing anti-globalist tendencies or insecurity, how do we overcome them? And the answer, I believe, is increased transparency in the technology itself. For example, with artificial intelligence, that would mean a greater understanding of the algorithmic processes themselves, of the data that they've been trained on. We're increasingly learning that data and algorithms can be biased based on how they're created by human beings who have our own inherent biases. So we need to be aware of all these things first. That's the transparency element. And then I think we need to have a society and even global level discussion on what we want these rules or the technology that we utilize to be, how we want to implement it. So I think it just needs to be a much more transparent and public discussion rather than throwing our lot in with technology that we may not fully understand.
That's a quite wholesome answer, but actually that leads me to another question,
Sure.
which you have might partially answered. So it's regarding with your career. You have been in cyber security. You have worked with intelligence agencies for years. So this comes as a major challenge for intelligence agencies because now they have the power, as we have been reading a lot, to understand this data, but how can the citizens be given more, sort of transparency with regards to how intelligence agencies are working, keeping in mind that intelligence agencies at the end of the day are for security purposes?
It is true, a fair portion of my career was spent in the U.S. intelligence community on cyber threat analysis work. So I appreciate those concerns. We've certainly seen public discussions of both U.S. intelligence activities and other countries' intelligence activities, not the least of which has been the whole public discussion of Edward Snowden and his efforts to reveal things that the U.S. government may or may not have been doing. So I appreciate those concerns. At the same time, I would add the observation that we fear the big brother government state has so much information. It's in many cases private sector companies who may have even more personal information on you. So I don't think it's just an intelligence issue. I think it's a who owns data privacy question, of which the government and its intelligence aspects are one example. Now, to directly address the question you asked, just to be fair, I think it all comes down to oversight and democracy. Both the United States and India are robust democracies, and while we have different cultures and political systems, I think there's an interest in having the people know what its government is doing. Not every secret detail of every activity, but to understand the principles that it's behind, to understand the citizens' rights to confront their government if they feel they've been treated unjustly or if they feel their civil rights have been violated. So it's a delicate balance. That may not be the most helpful answer, but it's the correct one. You have to strike an appropriate balance in the society, and you need affirmative oversight. You need the politicians and the secret services to be responsible to the public and to have the public have an opportunity to know what's going on. I can think of some European states, for example, that are champions of human rights, but whose own members of parliament do not have the constitutional legal right to know what their signals intelligence agencies are doing. They don't have the kind of oversight opportunity that the U.S. Congress does over the U.S. intelligence community. Of course, I won't purport that the U.S. is the best at anything or always correct. I would have seen a few places I think we have better oversight than some other countries do, and I would encourage everyone to do the same, because even in our system, we've found wrongdoing from time to time.
Amazing. I mean, that is actually all I wanted to discuss with you. But on a closing note, just a question from a layman's perspective.
Sure.
So if you could help me understand, has the internet become more secure over time, or has it become, in a sense, more insecure? Because these tech companies now have immense power to monitor you at each moment. There are data servers, as you yourself talked about, that most of these companies reside in North America. But with these new security developments that are also taking place side by side, such as the HTTPS revolution that started I think 5 to 10 years ago, and completely sounded the internet to be more secure. So if you can give a viewpoint on that.
I'm not sure the security architecture of the internet itself as we know it has changed that much over time. It is fundamentally insecure. It was designed for functionality, and a lot of the hardware and software that it's based upon or that it requires for its functioning is again designed for functionality, not security. What I do think we've seen is the growth in its ubiquitous use in every aspect of our lives, in our economies, in our national securities and militaries, have led us to realize that that insecure architecture may not meet all of the needs we have. Think about financial transactions. We're starting to realize we want areas for strong authentication and identification. That's not what the internet was originally designed for. We're starting to realize in security contexts or personal privacy contexts that we want new elements that weren't hardwired into the initial system. So I see two opportunities. First, you actually go back and you try to re-engineer the existing internet, or you try to re-engineer a new version of the internet, or we work through other regulatory and political and legal means to regulate or control how a society actually utilizes the internet and what individuals' rights are within it. I think, quite frankly, neither one will be a perfect solution. The first is probably not economically feasible in many respects, and the second may not completely do the job we're hoping of it. So I think it's a tough situation. I think it's an important topic to address, but the internet itself was designed in an insecure fashion, partly by purpose, and we're coming to realize that doesn't necessarily fulfill all of the uses to which we're trying to apply it today.